Hi, everyone. I'm the Director of Entertainment at HarpersBazaar.com, and I'm here with the two magnificent stars of the show you just watched, Charlotte Hope and Laura Carmichael. Hello, ladies. Welcome.
Hi.
So this is such a fascinating story. I find it so interesting that we're meeting these two characters who, for so long, have only been sort of the footnotes of this very famous, very earth-shattering man in history. What initially drew you both to the project, and what was your first reaction to the script?
Stop.
Well, yeah, I think like you say, I think my very limited knowledge of this period sort of starts with Henry divorcing and beheading and killing wives. So I was sort of really intrigued to know the sort of story before that, and to see it from the point of view of so many women in the court, and to see Catherine as this young, beautiful, strong woman, I think is so cool. And yeah, for me, for Maggie, I found her story and her journey really, really fascinating and really relatable. She seems like someone I could see myself in that she's sort of not interested in pursuing the power and the court. She just sort of wants to keep her family safe. So I found her an interesting character in this context.
Charlotte.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Big
Really
question.
trying to make Shaw work.
Yeah.
It's a horrible nickname. Yeah, I kind of similar thing. Like, I knew the version of Henry that was a tyrannical despot and had 6 wives, and I didn't realize that actually Henry and Catherine were married for 24 years, and really she's the main wife, I think. The main wife.
You're biased.
I'm not biased. It was a really long time, and the others came in quick succession. And so I think it's really interesting to take a story that you think you know and to subvert it and to like flip the perspective and go, oh, actually you think you know this story, but there's like a whole ton of it that you don't know, and a character that you don't know. Like in England, we have this perception of Catherine as this like dowdy, pious old bag, and actually the Spanish perception for example, we have this amazing Spanish actress called Alicia Borrachero who played Isabella, and I spent a lot of the time at the beginning of the shoot speaking to her, and she was like, actually, Catherine's reputation in Spain is that she's known for being really fierce and determined and brave, and that's not the version of Catherine that I knew. So getting to kind of, yeah, just like revisit a character I thought I knew, but actually it turned out that I didn't, was kind of cool.
What sort of research did you put into the role? Obviously, we have these perceptions, but are there diary entries? Are there letters? In some cases, do you just have names, for example? And how much of it do you get? How much of your interpretation of the character did you get to bring to the role?
A kind of a mixture. I think what's really cool about this story is that there's like a ton of stuff written about the men. We know loads, and there's like loads of history books that are about the male experience of this period, but women still made up 50% of the like society, and just because they're not written about doesn't mean that their stories aren't relevant and didn't exist. And actually, I think what was really interesting about this story is that it goes into like the Lina de Cardones character a lot, and she's got like one line in a history book, but we got to reimagine her whole story, because just because a man wrote one line about it doesn't mean that she didn't have a real and full interesting life. So that was kind of cool.
I mean, yeah, you try and do as much research as you can, and then you kind of have to trust the scripts and let that be the thing. And yeah, and bring your imagination. Certainly for Steph, who plays Lina, she talks a lot about that, because there isn't a lot to draw on for her. We know she was there, and the rest comes from Emma and Matthew and from Steph bringing her to life, which is awesome.
I mean, obviously this took place 500 years ago, but I mean, our relationships between human beings haven't changed. I think the sisterhood between Rosa, Lina, and Catherine is so moving. I love the scene with them on the boat where they're like already taking care of each other. Charlotte, can you talk about building that sort of court and the warmth of that in this show?
Yes, I forced them to be friends with me. I kind of did, actually. But no, I thought that was really important. Like, I wanted it to be as much a story about Catherine becoming a queen and fulfilling her destiny as much as it is a story of these three young girls coming from Spain and being, it's like an immigrant story, really. They're totally like fish out of water. They're scared and intimidated, and they really bond together. And I think that, like, Catherine's relationship with Rosa and Lina is some of her most human like aspects. Like, a lot of the time we see her be quite entitled and privileged, but then there are some moments with those girls that are really grounding and beautiful, and that was really exciting.
I think it's so interesting at the one point where she's asking Lina, are you afraid? And that's such a super vulnerable moment. Like, this is who she is on the inside. And then 5 minutes later, she is literally barking at the King of England.
Yeah.
Like, it just says so much about who this person is and how there are so many multitudes contained in this person we know nothing about from history, essentially.
No, and that's what was really, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. That's what was really exciting to me, is that she's like really, she's a lot of different things. Like, yeah, at times she's really sure of herself and she's got this like deep grit, but at times she's also freaking out and flailing, and she's really trying to navigate this terrifying world. And that was a real gift as an actress. Like, Emma was like, she doesn't have to be likable. She doesn't have to be, she can be a bit messy, and she can be like brought to account by her ladies. She can be all of those things. And that's a really exciting.
That's okay.
Now let Laura talk.
Well, Laura, I wanted to ask you, because your character gets the really unique privilege of introducing the whole story in the beginning of this episode. Can you talk about how that came to be? Was that originally in the script, and what did the conversations around that look like?
They did change it slightly. It wasn't going to be Maggie to begin with, but I think, as it sort of built, I think having this another female voice open it, they felt was the right way. And I think, for Maggie, she kind of ties you into the White Princess. We know her from that series, and so I think she's part of the English gang, which sort of grounds the show as these gorgeous, sexy Spaniards get off the boat. They kind of meet with all of us in our heavy brown, green, and grey costumes, it feels like. And I kind of love that. I love the contrast and the shock for like Margaret Beaufort and for us as we meet these sort of colourful costumes and big personalities. I think it really works.
But she's also, very interestingly, the bridge between the Spanish court and the English court, because, of course, she lost her brother in the whole initiative to bring Catherine to England. So, I mean, the position of your character is so interesting to me, because she's on the outside but also is deeply tethered emotionally to all of the machinations of the court.
I think that's it. She's seen so much of that. All of her family have been murdered by the Tudors, but she's married in. She's kept close to the king by her marriage to Richard. She's in a very difficult position, and she has to walk a fine line when really what she knows would be easier is if she could leave the court of Westminster and never come back. But alongside that, you sort of see their relationship change between Maggie and Catherine as they get to know each other. And I think Maggie really ends up admiring Catherine.
I really love the dichotomy of this show, because on one end you have global, earth-shattering, Europe, Spain versus England versus Scotland was mentioned at one point. And then on the other hand, you just have this girl standing in front of a boy asking him to write her love letters.
Being catfish. She was catfish.
Exactly. 500 years later.
It's not true romance. It's very manipulative.
How do you walk that line between deeply intimate and personal and earth-shattering, groundbreaking world politics?
I think it's the same, though. She's just trying to navigate situations and personalities, and she's she's doing that the best way she can. So whether it's like with Henry VII, like Elliot's character, she's just trying to stand her ground and present the version of herself that she wants to be, or whether it's when she's kind of letting characters in. I think that's what's fascinating about Catherine, is she's constantly navigating and then repositioning and navigating, and that's what makes her an interesting kind of a politician, really.
And we have to talk about Margaret Beaufort, because Dame Harriet Walter just makes my heart sing. Can you talk about working with her in that role? She is hilarious.
She's so good. Yeah, I'm in awe. Like, I watch the show and I'm like, oh God, she's so good.
I don't think she should be as funny as she actually is, but it makes it work so well.
Yeah, she's just a phenomenal actress.
Is it intimidating going head to head with her?
I mean, it would be if she wasn't so kind.
Yeah.
Like, she's just
she's really
nicest woman, and yeah, I don't think she realizes how much of a big deal she is as well. Like, it's she's incredible. But yeah, it's really fun, and I feel like she's an actor that really wants to talk about things before and discuss ideas. She's not there to kind of, she wants to.
No, she's really
work
generous.
with you. Yeah.
She wants to dig into the meat of what's going on
and hear what you want to do about it, and what you want to bring to it, and what your thoughts are, which, when you're working with someone as experienced and brilliant as she is incredibly generous.
Yeah.
Do you find that you have that experience a lot when you're working with, if you have a big scene with fellow actors, or like a really intimate one-on-one scene, that they are more willing to talk with you, or does it just fully depend on who the person is?
I had a really positive experience with everyone, really. But that was some of the most fun I had was prepping the scenes like outside of shooting. When you shoot a TV show, it's really, really fast. So you're just trying to, it can move pretty fast paced, but like Rory, who plays Henry VIII, and I did like a ton of work outside, and like Nadia and Steph and I, and actually like we found some really exciting kind of material, and we got to play around with it a lot out of kind of shooting, so that when we came to shooting, we were really prepped.
How long do you feel like it took you to find your character? Did you come in the first day and you're like, I know who this person is? Or
I got to about episode 8, and then I was like, and now I would like to go back and
That's
start
a wrap.
again.
It's so hard. I mean, to know when it is that you find it. I don't know if I do ever know that. You're just trying and feeling in the dark, going, that feels right, or not, depending on your mood that day. But Birgitta, who was our director, was very helpful and brilliant at making sure we had rehearsal time before we started, having chats with each of us individually, but also in sort of significant pairings. So I had some chats with Alex Moen, and who plays Lizzie, and with my husband Richard, Alan. And so we had those sort of moments to go, this is how we think this works, and on the day or on these scenes, let's try and push that and show that in different ways, which is helpful.
Yeah, she was amazing. She's our lead director, and she really set us up beautifully, so that we'd done a lot of that kind of like background grounding and working out who these people were, so that by the time we got to shooting, we had at least something in our back.
Will you say what, like, if there's one either bit of information or something you read in a book or some sort of conversation that you had that you walked away saying, I think I'm finally getting there?
I literally don't think I ever felt like I'm like now I think I could go back and I would kill it.
But I don't know. Sometimes it's like scenes that are really helpful. There's a scene with Arthur that I felt like I was like, okay, the one under the tree. Just because that was helpful, because you get to, that she helped bring Arthur up and she was around more for him than his mother was. But it's when you get to then play those days that you go, right, this is how I imagine those moments to be, of being sort of motherly to him. So when you get those days, that can be a helpful thing of like experiencing it.
We shot in the Alhambra. That was really helpful to go and like base it in Spain. And we shot in the Alhambra at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so being there and being like, oh, Catherine actually stood here and I'm standing here. There was like a little bit of Spanish something.
It must have been emotional.
It was it was really emotional. Also, it was kind of near at the beginning, so I was pretty emotional all the time. I was just very excited about getting to do that job. And yeah, there were a few moments, like the first kind of week on location and in the Alhambra and also on my wedding day, where there was just like a moment where I was in those costumes being like, I'm doing the job of my dreams and this is really happening. And that was pretty... It was pretty special.
The costumes are exquisite in this. Like Phoebe Duguay did an incredible job building this world in super lavish, but also never too over the top. It just feels just right.
Yeah, she's amazing.
What is it like the first day when you get into your costume and get onto set and you're like, oh, we're here. This is happening.
It's so fun. We feel very lucky, I think. You know, we're always aware of how hard this job can be and how lucky you are to get to do those jobs that you kind of dreamed about doing when you were a kid. So yeah, big lavish costume dramas are really fun.
They're really great. Honestly, it's just literally like you get to dress up in amazing costumes and go to beautiful locations and do acting
and ride horses.
Yeah. I've actually got a ton of pictures from my first day was me, Steph and Nadia, and it's like, and Steph and it's a big deal for us the first day. So I've got like about 100 pictures of us being like,
and then you have a social media embargo for another 12 months.
I know, I'm saving them.
Charlotte, I'd love if you could talk about the relationship that develops with Harry, because obviously we're seeing it the very first moment that they've met, and most of us only know what happened 24 years later. So we tease a little bit about what is
steamy.
To come.
Yeah, it's
very nice.
I think it's a very steamy storyline. It's very passionate, and I think actually what's really interesting for me is that she's got this relationship with Arthur, which is chaste and kind, and in those first couple of episodes, she really learns what the value of actually having a patient, kind husband could be. But she also comes from these parents, Isabella and Ferdinand, who are a real love match and a real, passionate desire match, which isn't something that was, often happened in Tudor times. And I think with Harry, it's this kind of intense chemical reaction that happens in her, and a lot of the time she's fighting that because she thinks she's better than love, and she thinks she's better than desire, and she's really just there to be the queen until she works out how to manipulate the two together. But I think it is like that. The story at its heart is a love story between these two people who he was genuinely obsessed with her, and they were genuinely in love, and people forget that because they just know that she got divorced. But actually, if she'd had a son, they probably would have had a really amazing marriage, and we'd all be Catholic.
People tend to forget that. People tend to forget that she is really the backbone of all of this. It's not Henry, it's her supposed lying about whether or not she consummated her marriage with Arthur, and she was way smarter than we gave her credit for.
Yeah, she's a really smart, amazing woman. I think she's incredible.
I wonder, is it at all either intimidating or just sort of overwhelming to think about from a modern sensibility that these two women were born into an era where every move they made was designated by the name that they had, and for Catherine that is a very that works to her her advantage, but for Maggie it's like a scourge.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very scary thing for her, and I kind of love as well with Maggie that there's a feeling that if the Tudors hadn't come along, it would have been her family, they would have been ruling England. And instead, this brutal and bloody thing happened to her relatives. It's there in her, and she I think, I could imagine her walking those corridors thinking, what if it had been still the Yorks on the throne? So, yeah, but she can't escape her name, and her loyalty is always going to be brought into question, which would have been terrifying. Yeah, she's constantly worried about being taken to the Tower.
With reason.
Yes, or not. Who knows?
Who knows? It's true.
Stay tuned.
Give us a second season.
Charlotte, how do you feel about that, sort of coming from your modern sensibilities, if it were?
What was the
Sort
question again?
Just sort of looking at it from the sense of, oh, this person was born to live this life and had no rule over it whatsoever.
I mean, I think with Catherine, that gives her a really strong determination. I actually really respect that about her. She's unwavering in her intention to be queen. And I think that's kind of cool, especially as a woman, because we're used to men being like, this is my journey and my destiny, and I'm like gonna follow it without question. We're not so used to that with women. So it made it feel quite refreshing to me, because I was like, yeah, she's pretty headstrong, and that's really amazing to get to play.
It's so refreshing to watch a young woman bite
Yeah,
at,
to know what she
all these
wants and be
old,
like, yeah, I'm gonna do it.
grumbling white men.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's super refreshing to see, obviously, majority female directors, female producers, writers. Your DOP is a woman. Can you talk about, does that change the vibe of how you work on set? Do you feel like you're getting a more fuller picture?
I mean, I kind of just want to say not really. Like, everyone was asked to do the job because they're amazing at their jobs, and yeah, a lot of them are women, and like, that's it. It's and there are a lot of great men as well. It was just a really happy company. But yeah, I love working with women, and I love working with men, and I love that we're sort of in this time now where we are talking about it. But I hope soon it will just be super normal.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Me too.
Yeah.
I really did like working with women. I mean, partly because they're all amazing filmmakers in their own right, but also our opening block director Birgitta sent me this message when we wrapped, and she was like, this was the first time that someone took a chance on me, that I didn't have to fight tooth and nail to prove myself against the men. She was like, stars gave me that opportunity, and actually, thank God that they did, because she's completely brilliant. And maybe 10 years ago, they would have given it to a white, safe man, but they didn't. They gave her the opportunity. And I'm like Maya as well, like, she's just a phenomenal filmmaker who maybe 10 years ago, people would have just been like, oh, we'll just get the man that we always get. But we didn't. We went with these incredible talents, and that actually on set meant that we were a group of women teamed together being like, we're taking advantage of this opportunity and fucking running with it. And we were all doing that together, and that created this kind of incredible sisterhood where we were really teamed up and really just aware of how amazing, I was like so aware of how amazing Maya's work was, and I was so in awe of Birgitta and Dana and Lisa, and I was like, that was a really, for me, I was like really in awe of that, and really grateful to be surrounded by these women who inspired me so much.
It's particularly interesting when it comes to such historical, steeped in fact sort of stories like this, because the winner tells the story, and in this case it's technically Henry VIII, where there are conversations about what it means to bring like the female gaze or perspective to this particular source material, and what it looked like to be a woman of sort of any rank in Tudor England.
Yeah, and I think like the thing is that anyone can tell a female perspective. Like,
absolutely,
you can do it through men, but I just think it's really important that we're like focusing on that version.
Yeah, I totally agree, and kind of giving the space to these filmmakers, as you say, who maybe 10 years ago that wouldn't have happened.
Once again, because it's so steeped in fact, you wonder if there is any room to play around. Was there anything that you particularly wanted to bring to your characters or to even a certain scene that wasn't necessarily in the script, but you were just like, I can't let this pass up. I know the character would do it this way, for example?
All of her baths.
The baths.
How much time did you spend in the tub for this show?
A lot of time in the tub, yep. I actually, one of those bath scenes, there's a scene later on where there are some really beautiful scenes where like Steph and I just got to chat as girls, and those are some of my favorite scenes in the like whole series, because you forget, because she's a queen and a princess, but sometimes she is just a girl talking to her friends, and yeah, those were kind of my favorite scenes. That's off topic.
I know.
Just about playing around. Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple questions from the audience before we wrap up. Dexter's question is for everyone. What was your best moment filming this series?
For me, it was probably about 2.5. For the first 2.5 weeks, I was convinced I was about to get fired. I had such intruder. I remember saying that to Georgie.
Imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, not intruder syndrome. Sorry, some other thing. I just was sure that they were going to change their minds. So there was probably a point about 2.5 weeks in where I worked out that they'd shot too many days on me to be able to replace me. And at that point, I was really excited because I was like, they're stuck with me.
Yeah, I really love that scene under the tree with Arthur. Thinking about that a lot today. That was a really wonderful day. I love that scene, and he's very special.
Yeah,
Angus
he's
in me.
amazing. He's so good.
How often did you have to deal with the drizzling and the English weather? And
No,
it was a crazy hot summer.
Yeah.
It was so mad. We were sort of trying to go, welcome to England, and isn't it drizzly? And it was a heat wave. It was ridiculous.
There's a point in episodes 3 and 4 where I swear you can see beads of sweat on our forehead.
It's Spanish weather in England.
Yeah.
You brought it with you. Okay, last question, which is from Ellen for Laura. How does your current role as Maggie challenge you in ways different from Edith on Downton Abbey? P.S. I adore your work.
Aww.
Thank you. I just feel like every new role is terrifying and a new challenge. And so, it's kind of just taking that on again, really. I feel like Maggie's very strong and very brave, and certainly as her journey goes on, I felt like that was a kind of new thing. Not to say that Edith wasn't brave, but it's just different. It's always a challenge, I think.
Is it different spending less time with the character than you would on 7 or 8 seasons?
I guess that's it. Edith became.
We might spend 7 or 8
second
seasons with these characters. Please,
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah.
The entirety of Catherine's life. Right
I would happily. I would play her
Us
all
too.
the way through.
Us too. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all for
Thank
your
you
great
very much.
questions.